Welcome once again to the DRH Show. Today, I'm joined by the founder of Codex Beauty Labs, Barbara Paldus. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's a pleasure.
Well, great to have you here, Barbara. So just tell us your background, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
So I would have never guessed 10 years ago that I'd end up in doing skincare. I started out with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, and my first company actually made analytical equipment for measuring gases, whether that was environmental or industrial. My second company after that, Finesse Solutions, we made equipment for biotech research and manufacturing. So as a recent example, for example, the Pfizer vaccine and the J&J vaccine are made in the equipment that we started installing back in 2014, 2015 for vaccine manufacturing. And I sold that company in 2017 and wanted to focus on a consumer product. And so today I find myself at Codex Beauty Labs, and we're focusing on skincare solutions for people with skin conditions. So today we work with the National Eczema Association and the National Psoriasis Foundation. So we have products for people with psoriasis, products that are for people with eczema. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be launching our shunt collection for acne. So we're very excited about that.
Fantastic. You really have a great qualifications now. I feel that I should be calling you Dr. Paldus.
No, please call me Barbara. That's my father. When I hear Dr. Paldus, I think of my dad.
Okay, so I'll stick with Barbara then. So tell us more about Codex Beauty Labs and what made you want to start a skincare line, because there are so many skincare companies now. So people are just wondering, do we actually need one more?
And probably the answer is no, which is why I want to de-emphasize the word beauty in our name. In fact, someday we may be dropping it and really focus on the labs part. So what we're focused on right now is doing a lot of research on plants and the gene expression that various plants can enable in the human skin for things like inflammation reduction, for things like sebum control, for keratolytic properties to shed the dead, dry outer layers. And so we're really looking at it from a more clinical perspective. And our future products are all going to be over-the-counter drugs in the United States, not necessarily in Europe, because Europe classifies certain active levels differently. Like, for example, salicylic acid, 2% is not a over-the-counter drug product in Europe, whereas in the US it's considered one. But basically think of them as dermocosmetic products for specific skin conditions. And that space, I would say, is still fairly wide open for products that are vegan, cruelty-free, and most importantly, microbiome supporting and microbiome friendly, because the moment you start using a lot of these very harsh actives, whether that's sulfur or salicylic acid or benzoyl peroxide, they can be detrimental to the microbiome. And what you want to do is help the skin condition without necessarily basically causing problems with your microbiome, because you're kind of then going from one problem to another problem.
Absolutely. Now, I feel that I'm listening to some science lecture, but growing up, were you always interested in science?
I was, although at one point I wanted to be an archaeologist because I was fascinated by how much humanity has actually evolved or not evolved. And so I was very fascinated by Assyrian and Babylonian culture, by the ancient Egyptian cultures, trying to figure out, how much medicine and what kind of medical practices they had, what had happened to society and to knowledge and science in the Middle Ages, and then kind of how we pulled ourselves out of there in the Age of Enlightenment. So it's I was always interested in science, maybe from different aspects. And when I was in my teens then, I really decided that it went from particle physics to electrical engineering, but I decided I really was fascinated by how the world worked and explaining and possibly even figuring out novel solutions for problems. And then I kind of went from physics to engineering because I decided I really like to make things and make stuff.
And as a scientist, what would you say are the most memorable moments to you working in the field? What are the highlights, Barbara?
Sure. So one was during my PhD. We were actually trying to make this sensor. And everybody prior to when we started running these experiments, this was called cavity ring down spectroscopy. And what people did is they took two very highly reflecting mirrors. So think of it as like 99.999%. And they were trying to inject light into these mirrors so that they could measure gas molecules that would be trapped inside this cavity, which is why it was called cavity ring down spectroscopy. And we were trying to use a diode laser, and diode lasers are these semiconductor, very finicky lasers that if you have feedback, so think of, you have this cavity and now 99.999% of the light is going back into the laser. So the laser was going crazy. It was jumping everywhere. We couldn't inject light into it. And we had an aha moment of, well, what if we stop using 2 mirrors and we go to 3, and then we can make the input basically like a triangle shape of this cavity. So we have 2 flat mirrors and 1 curved mirror on the bottom. And then the light comes off at 90 degrees and it never goes back into the laser. So I know it sounds really simple, Dennis, and you're going, well, isn't that obvious? Like you just make it go off at 90 degrees, not back on itself. But that was like one of these science breakthrough moments that I'll remember for the rest of my life, because from that moment on, we were able to miniaturize everything. And, we had been using these huge pulse lasers that were like the length of a kitchen table. And now we could use these like tiny little diode lasers. And that meant we could make compact boxes of these sensors. And now, I know, don't laugh, we could put them in trees to monitor, the impact of CO2 and forest CO2. We could look at carbon cycle. We can put them on a ship and send them off to Antarctica. We could attach other things to melt water. We could look at ice cores. So all of a sudden for climate research, it became enabling, or we could put it on a smokestack and measure industrial gas emissions. So those little breakthroughs are actually incredibly meaningful.
Absolutely. And I could really understand why it's so memorable to you as a scientist. But let's go back to talking about skincare, Barbara. So as I was navigating your website, I realized that most of your products, or all of your products, in fact, are naturally formulated. So why did you decide to go for, naturally formulated skincare products?
So actually, they're biotech. So they're biotech cells from plants. So we started out as naturally formulated, and you're absolutely right. And then we started looking at the ecological impact of growing large numbers of plants and the amount of work and transportation to harvest those numbers of plants and then extract something that would be maybe like 1%. So we'd be throwing out all of this plant material. So we've gone back to the supply chain, and we're now working with a lot of biotech companies that have figured out the one plant cell that's the active cell in that plant. So it's still identical to the plant itself, but now it's made in a bioreactor, and you can grow trillions and trillions of those cells in a tiny little vessel. Think of your kitchen mixer. So you can grow, a 1-year supply of these cells in something like a kitchen mixer. So now you can think of, from an energy perspective, water usage perspective, basically from a sustainability perspective, it's incredibly efficient and it's incredibly pure, because we're no longer worried about, is there heavy metal contamination in the water? Did they put pesticides on it by mistake? Are we taking away farmland that could be used for producing food? So to us, we're basically, yes, we're natural, but we're natural tech. And that part is the biotech part of using plant stem cells and plant cells.
And of course, you mentioned earlier that you're also cruelty product, which is really remarkable. But I was just wondering, because you're an expert in skincare products, why is it that not so many brands are actually going cruelty free?
That I don't know. I thought a lot of brands were going cruelty free. Because I think that's consumer driven. And if I look at, the younger generation, I think that's an absolute must. I think a lot of brands may not necessarily have the certification because it's a bit of work, but I think I don't think anyone anymore wants to test anything on animals, especially given, again, that we have various types of biotech testing. So people can create tissue models. So we can, for example, mimic a tissue model of skin. We can mimic stem cells. We can mimic vaginal cells for testing irritation or sensitivity for female hygiene products. So there's a lot we can do in a petri dish today, so that we actually don't need to do any animal testing. And I think a lot of the suppliers now, as well as the raw materials, are on board. And with technology, again, I think we can leave that in the past, and I really hope we do.
And of course, aside from being cruelty free, a lot of consumers now are also more particular whether a particular product is suited to their skin types. I remember when I was growing up, I was from Southeast Asia, and if you live in Southeast Asia, you're probably aware that many of us are quite obsessed with whitening skin products. And when I moved here in Britain, it was the other way around. Everyone, especially live in Essex, and it's got a reputation that there's people here would go to tanning salons. But I got a bit off tangent. But are Codex Beauty products ideal for all skin types?
So we've tried to formulate them for as many skin types as possible. I'm not going to arrogantly say that they truly are suitable for all skin types, but what we have done is we've done allergy testing. That's called human repeat insult patch testing, HRIPT, where you basically put it on people's backs over a period of time repeatedly, and you make sure that there isn't any redness or irritation. So we've tested all of our products on what are called Fitzpatrick phototypes 1 through 6. So you can think of 1 as skin that will instantly burn in the sun, has very, very little melanin, and then type 6 is, incredibly dark skin, kind of like a very rich dark chocolate, and has an incredible amount of melanin. And then 2 through 5 are kind of somewhere in between. So it's kind of a gradation scale. It's a little bit of an older way to look at skin. I mean, typically we should really look at melanin content, but we've done testing on all these different skin types. And yes, I mean, can I say that, there will be absolutely no irritation in the most sensitive skin types? No, because we don't know how to recruit for that. So when you do a test like that, you kind of do your best to recruit as much diversity as possible. We typically test on 100 people, sometimes 200 people if it's a sensitive skin product. And we get the statistics. Can you find one person maybe out of 8 billion that may have an irritation? Yes, that's one of the challenges of dealing with products that are used by humans.
Absolutely. And of course, you have lots of products within Codex. So what's your favorite and what makes it special?
So my one favorite product, and this is one that I use every day, is the Onto Serum. And that is a serum with our M3 antioxidant complex. So those are plants, so maqui, morcilla, and maqui, which come from South America, specifically Patagonia, that were used by the Mapuche tribes that we work with over there for hundreds of years. They have an incredibly low incidence of skin cancer. And they actually eat those plants, but we use them topically for skin because they deliver incredibly stable and effective antioxidants. So we prefer that over a vitamin C or an ascorbic acid that won't be stable in formulation necessarily. It's very hard to protect its activity in formulation and where you need significant amounts of it. And so because this is an adaptogenic antioxidant, it actually reduces the reactive oxidative stress in your skin. And so the serum allows your skin to start rebuilding collagen and to redensify. So when you hit my age, I'm 51, that kind of product is really important to kind of keep looking like I may be, in my 40s. To shave off a couple years.
Yeah, you just completely shocked me when you said you're 51. I'm 40, but I wish I looked younger than you when I hit that age. But you really look remarkable.
Thank you.
So you're really a good ambassador for your own skincare products, Barbara, I have to say. So what has been your best-selling product?
So up to now, our best-selling product has been probably the Skin Superfood and the facial oil. The facial oil is the one product I can tell you that we've sold over 10,000 now without having a single irritation. So I'm really proud of that, since we were talking about irritation earlier. And that one has both the seal from the Psoriasis Foundation and the National Eczema Foundation. So I love that product very much. It's also great in the wintertime for any skin type that gets dry. It's also good for oily skin types. And this was something I learned, is that if you actually use a dry oil on oily skin, it helps your skin regulate its own oil production. So you can actually reduce oiliness by putting on an oil. to me, that was completely counterintuitive when we started. And so we did a lot of studies to really understand that better. And it's simply that, again, with the right oil combinations and antioxidants in that oil, and in this case also certain extracts from Fucus serratus, which is a marine plant that grows off the coast of Northern Ireland, you can actually create this beautifully elastic, smooth, firmer skin as well. So that I would say is probably going to be our best-selling product. And we're now working on updating our skin superfood, which has been one of our best-selling products. And that one, people just complained, Immortelle, which is one of the ingredients of the Bia complex, has a certain odor. And that odor is unique, and it's not necessarily pleasant. And when we launched the product, we were intent on having it be, allergen-free, fragrance-free. So there's no essential oils in it, no fragrancing whatsoever. And a lot of people have made some disparaging comments, which unfortunately I can't disagree with. So we thought, oh, it's such a great treatment cream. It has such great clinical data. People won't care about the smell. So that was one of our biggest learnings. And so we're going to be reissuing it with actually plant stem cells and with basically a nice allergen-free scent so that people actually enjoy using it. So that was one of my biggest learnings in the industry, is the user experience is just as important as the product efficacy.
Absolutely, but I've actually managed to try that facial oil, because one of your stock is in London, Dermwa. About a few months ago, they invited me for an event, and they actually give those products to everyone who attended the event. And I have to agree that it's really a good product because it really moisturizes your skin. And what I really like about it is the packaging. It's made of butter. It's not made of plastic, and it's actually the first product that I've used which actually is not in plastic, so that's quite something. And I really enjoy the consistency. It's quite different from the usual facial moisturizer that you would get anywhere else. But we've been talking about your products and also your journey as a scientist, but I forgot to ask you, Barbara, what was your skincare journey like before Codex? Have you always been this youthful looking?
I actually did very little. Scientists are probably really bad at beauty. So my entire life, Dennis, I've pretty much I've been lucky if I owned lipstick, mascara, and maybe eyeliner. As I got into the beauty world, I had to discover blush. I'm one of these people who still refuses to use foundation. I just don't like how it feels. And then I break out after I use foundation. So I've had to kind of come to peace with a lot of our makeup artists over that when they try to put it on me for presentations. But my own skincare journey was really simple. I mean, I used a cleansing, basically a cleanser, usually soap. Yeah, not the greatest thing to use on skin, but it was easy in the shower just to use the same soap on your body as on your face. And then I was a huge fan actually of Lancome and later on La Prairie until, I started reading the ingredients lists and then asking the companies, for clinical data because I was wondering why I was paying so much money for it. And I got no answer. And so that was part of the reason I started Codex Beauty. The other was that it turned out my son had an allergy to a common preservative called phenoxyethanol. Not that phenoxyethanol is bad per se. There's a lot of studies showing that it's safe. But again, I couldn't get answers. And so what I wanted to do, and the reason we publish, for example, on all of our products, you'll see our clinical efficacy panel. And that basically shows exactly what the product does, their numbers. We explain what those numbers are. We explain what the measurement tools are on our website, because we want people to know that if you pay, for example, 30 pounds for this product, this is how much hydration you're going to get. This is what it's going to do for your transepidermal water loss. This is what it's going to do for your firmness. They know exactly what parameters we've tested, what parameters we've not tested. It's kind of like a nutrition label on food, right? You want to know the number of carbs, you want to know the amount of protein, sugar. So we want to be fully transparent with what the product does instead of writing claims that, personally me, like when I read some of these claims, I don't know what the words mean.
Of course, your skincare journey, as you've shared it to us, it's quite normal. There's nothing extraordinary. But I was just wondering if you could share to us how your skincare journey has affected your overall well-being. Because a lot of people who are watching this, they kind of interested about the well-being aspect of skincare.
So I think as we get older, we obviously, when I was in my 20s, I didn't even really think about my appearance. And it's fun now to kind of look at how everybody contours and everybody puts on all this makeup and everybody doesn't necessarily even look like themselves. And back in the 80s and the 90s, so in the 90s, I was in my 20s. Again, you didn't put on that much makeup. Or else when you did put on makeup, you wanted to look like a rock star, and so you overdid it. So it was either not very much or too much. And certainly no one was trying to kind of really change the shape of their face or, have there weren't these ideals of absolutely perfect skin. And so I would say it really in the last 10 years, as those ideals have gotten really higher, even myself, I've started looking, at my face on Zoom, looking at myself in the mirror, kind of going, wow, is this an unattainable goal? And what is actually realistic? And that led me to the conclusion in my skincare journey that I would rather have healthy skin than something that is photoshopped and unrealistic, because then at least when people meet me in person, they can recognize me. Because I've met a lot of people that I've seen, for example, on social media, and then you meet them and then you're like, who are you? And they're like, I'm so-and-so. And you kind of can't relate the actual physical person to the almost, I would call them their social media avatar. And so I think health is actually something, and wellness overall, the skin being the window to your health. So if you have issues with gut absorption, if you have incredible amounts of stress, and that causes oxidative stress in your skin, if you're not sleeping enough, if you're not drinking enough water, I think what I want to make the readers aware are there are basic things that you can do that will go a very long way to your skin health, keeping yourself hydrated, getting enough sleep so that your skin can regenerate overnight, and that helps your collagen kept built up and your microcirculation, and that gets rid of dark circles, and these are things you don't need to pay for. You just find time, right? You find clean water, you find a good bed and a quiet, dark room, and they will do a lot for your skin. And so assuming that the skincare will take care of everything is not necessarily the case. Taking a walk outside, using SPF regularly when you do go outside, just basic common sense things will go a very long way. And then obviously you can use the skincare to enhance it. And that's why we're now moving towards skin issues such as eczema or psoriasis, because those are topicals that really do have an impact. They have an impact on quality of life. You're not itchy, you're not scratchy, your skin's not cracking. Acne is another great example. They lead to also mental well-being from not constantly feeling inadequate when you look in the mirror and seeing red blotches. Rosacea is another example of a skin condition. So these are really to not just improve the topical health of the skin, but we're also interested now in looking at other types of effects, whether that's skin microbiome, gut microbiome, hormone effects, and tying all of it together for overall wellness, because ultimately that will be reflected in your skin. And that's a longer term solution. And I think you alluded to that, Dennis, that it's not just about skincare, it's about overall wellness, and skincare is one part of it.
Those are really crucial points that you've highlighted, Barbara, especially, that sometimes people just want to look beautiful, but they're not really looking into ways on how they could have a healthier skin. So thank you for reminding us about the importance of, looking after skin. And when you mentioned about rosacea, I actually have a conversation about this with Eve Kasha, who's actually the chief scientific officer of Demois. So for anyone who wants to explore more about skin conditions and also the technical aspect of skincare, I'll pop the link to on the description note about my conversation with Eve Kasha, so you can You can also watch about that. But you've probably already touched upon this earlier, but I just want to explore more about, because you've been on the skincare industry for quite a long time, so you've probably come across with a number of misconceptions about skincare. So if you could identify some of the misconceptions and address them, what's one thing that you wish people know about skincare?
Less is more. And I say this as someone who sells skincare. And less is more because at the end of the day, you want to maintain a healthy microbiome. So overwashing, washing with harsh cleansers, for example, is going to constantly strip your microbiome and change the pH of your skin. So you want to go for one product that's as gentle as possible, that will still be a good cleanser, but wash at most in the morning and in the evening, especially if you live, in an urban environment where there's a lot of particulate pollution. You do want to remove that before going to bed, but then not overdo it, not have 10 or 12 products. If you're a healthy 20 to 35-year-old, you probably only need a moisturizer or a hydration cream. If you're kind of over 35, you may want to add in a serum before the moisturizer for antioxidant delivery. But honestly, that's like 3 products. So basically a cleanser, a serum, and a moisturizer. If you do have a specific, eye condition, whether that's like puffy eyes or dark circles, then you may want to add a 4th eye product. And maybe in the wintertime, if it's really, really cold, you might want to have a facial oil to kind of cover your skin and prevent more dehydration during those dry winter months. But again, we're not talking more than 5 products plus your SPF, and the SPF always comes at the end. So I think, companies that try to sell a lot of products in very complicated routines, one has to be mindful that every product you put on will have an effect on that microbiome. So you want to make sure that all the products you're using are in fact microbiome friendly. And then not overdo it. And honestly, if you're younger, cleanser, moisturizer, SPF, 3 products, and you're good to go. And the beauty of minimizing and having a minimalist routine is then that you're not using a lot of packaging and you're not generating a lot of waste. So from a circular economy perspective, you're only using what you need, and that allows that minimal amount of waste you are generating to be recycled.
Talking about misconception, this just came to me, whether, does price equates quality when it comes to skincare? Because that's true actually for, let's say, booking a hotel. When I book something expensive, I know I'm expecting a good bed and service and so on. Is that the same for skincare?
So I wish I could answer that question concretely, but because people don't publish their clinical efficacy data, it's really impossible to be able to answer that question, which is why I would urge all the brands out there to publish their results, not just claims. And then we could answer your question, Dennis. If people actually publish, for example, is that $300 moisturizer really 10 times more moisturizing? Does it deliver 10 times the hydration, 10 times the improvement in skin barrier than a $30 moisturizer? Then bingo, you have your answer, and it scales linearly and all is good. If it's only 2 times or the same as that $30 moisturizer, well, then there's your answer. It's overpriced. And so this is, again, why we're really trying to get the industry to publish more of its performance data. If you buy a phone, right, they tell you the amount of memory on the phone and the battery life. If you buy a car, you get the gas mileage. If you buy a microwave, they tell you the power of that microwave. So okay, if I buy an 800-watt microwave or a 1,200-watt microwave or a 1,600-watt microwave, okay, I'm going to be able to boil water faster, right, because I have more wattage. With skincare, if it's just kind of this flowery description on the back, how do I compare, a silky, smooth, hydrated, plump look to, maybe, eliminates fine lines and wrinkles? How do I compare those 2 products? I can't. So short of having quantified data on the cartons, which is why we started the trend, we figured, okay, we're going to, just like in kindergarten, I'll show you mine, now you show me yours. We've showed ours, but very few companies are coming back showing actual data. So That's something I hope in the future will change, because then that's for the benefit of the consumer. Then the consumer can compare, right? It's just like looking on the cereal box. Okay, this one has 16 grams of sugar, this one has 2 grams of sugar. And then you can decide based on your health status, your age, your lifestyle, do I want to go for the sugar or not? So this way you can decide based on the measurements, for example, the firmness or the collagen increase, which is measured with the oscilloscope. That would give people then the ability to understand what it actually does. Right now, we rely on ingredients. We rely on ingredient stories. We don't know how those ingredients are effective in that specific formulation. The formulations obviously are proprietary. So the only thing we can do is say, okay, let's have performance data. It's really simple.
Ultimately, it's about providing the consumers enough information so they could make an informed decision whether that product is really worth the price they're paying for. But those are really valid concerns that you've highlighted, and I suppose the industry should really take some collective actions on how they could improve the industry. But no, Barbara, we've been talking about your journey within the skincare industry, and also we've been talking about skincare products, but we're actually approaching the end of this interview, and so I saved some questions that we could just learn more about you as a person and not just as a skincare expert. So my first question for you is, what's your advice for those who want to follow your footsteps, either as a scientist or as an entrepreneur?
Follow your passion. You're going to spend a huge number of hours working, so you may as well enjoy what you're doing and love what you're doing. So if you don't absolutely love what you're doing, don't do it. You'll be unhappy. If you do love it, then go for it by all means.
And other than skincare, what's your distressing outlet?
I like to walk. I like to walk around in nature. I like to hike. It lets me gather my thoughts, and it also puts things into perspective.
And if money was not an issue, what would you spend it on?
If money were not an issue, I think it would be great to develop, to continue working on cures for diseases and cures for cancer. There's nothing that's more tragic to me than seeing children still die of leukemia, although with CAR T therapies, we're now making really good progress there, but it would just be to accelerate that kind of science.
And if you were not doing what you're doing, you were not with Codex Beauty Labs, what would you have pursued in life? Would you have been an anthropologist?
I probably would have been an archaeologist, and I'd probably be somewhere in the Egyptian desert digging up, remnants of old cities, or somewhere basically in Iran or Iraq.
And of course, finally, the floor is all yours. Tell us what else is in the pipeline. You mentioned a new product. Remind us again of that. And if people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at?
Absolutely. So we're excited that in 2 weeks, we're going to be launching the first phase of our shot collection. So these are the 4 cosmetic products for oily skin. So they help control sebum, they reduce redness and irritation like you can get in acne-prone skin, and they also help with skin cell turnover so that you don't get plugged pores, and they reduce the size and the appearance of pores. So we're super excited about that. We're also super excited about our partnership with Dermois in the UK. They bring a huge amount of expertise. They can really communicate a lot of the efficacy data and the other kind of test data that we've generated, including the gene expression on the various ingredients. So they really get what we are as a brand. So we're very excited about our partnership with Dermois. And then people can reach me either at Codex Beauty or support at codexbeauty.com, or we have Zendesk. So they can send a query through our Zendesk support platform, or they can just email me at barbara.paldus@codexbeauty.com.
All of those links, including your email address, will be at the description notes. So anyone who's watching this, just scroll down. Well, Barbara, thank you for educating us about the importance of looking after our skin and also sharing your journey to us, not just as an entrepreneur, but also as a scientist. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to hearing more about Codex.
Sounds great, Dennis. Thank you again. And thank you to all those who are listening.
Thank you.